Welcome, 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 my friends, to another edition of More Bad News, brought to you, as always, by Camel Cigarettes. Take the Camel's Challenge, smoke Camels for 30 days, and see for yourself what a difference Camels can make in your life. Well, I'm a little raggedy today. Didn't get a very good sleep last night. I want you to know that, there's so much, talk of bad news, but what really ends up disturbing my sleep, my conscious, is really things that are close at hand. I don't know whether you've seen my puppy, Bella. Sometimes she's in the background, laying over there or over there or whatever. And she has Cushing's disease, and she's getting to the end, and it's a debilitating disease, and she's losing her ability to walk on her back legs. And Karen and I were talking today. Maybe tomorrow is time. We'll see. You can have horrible bad news in the whole world. Last week, I want to say that, it's like, I saw a video. This is Peter Wadham's A Farewell to Ice, Oxford University Press book, I think 2019, let's see, 2017. He's the world's leading expert on ice. And to give you an idea, it's for 50 years, Peter Wadhams has made an annual visit to the world's poles and measured the ice caps. His conclusions are inescapable. They're melting. That's the inescapable conclusion. In fact, all the ice on the planet is melting. The North Pole will likely be ice-free for the first time in 10,000 years, and should sea ice and land ice on Greenland and Antarctica melt into the ocean, the resulting rise in sea level would devastate coastal communities worldwide, and the release of methane currently trapped by offshore permafrost would have a 23 times greater greenhouse warming effect per molecule than CO2. In other words, an ice-free Arctic summer will have an albedo effect nearly equivalent to that of the last 30 years combined, causing what some have called the Arctic death spiral. All right. Hey, just warning. So he's the leading expert on ice, and last week he did a new update on YouTube, and you can understand this. When it's summer in the northern hemisphere, it's winter in the southern hemisphere. It's in Australia, New Zealand, it's summer in January, and so the poles. So the same thing is true for the Arctic and the Antarctic. When it's summer in the Arctic, it's winter in the Antarctic, and when it's summer in the Antarctic, it's winter in the Arctic. That's no longer the case now. He reported that now what they're finding is it's summer on both poles all year round. There's no winter anymore. It's warming up 3 times faster than anywhere else on the planet anyway, and the consequences of this for the mechanics of our planet's climate system, are going to be devastating. And what we don't understand is, it's like things work until they don't. We don't really understand exponential change. We think that things are going to get a little bit worse, and a little bit worse, and a little bit worse, but it's not like that. What's happening is you're living in a nice little town, and then suddenly it doesn't work anymore. There's been an accident on the railroad, and now your town is completely polluted, and you just can't live there anymore. You're living in paradise, until the fire comes through and completely destroys your town. I mentioned that we have refugees from war and climate greater than ever in our history, and it is increasing at a very disturbing rate, as is conflict everywhere. So it's not like there's a long trajectory ahead of us. Um, it's going to be this situation for various places that it becomes completely untenable, and people become refugees, and these refugees are inevitably going to meet very dire ends. It, it's a very dark future. Um, that, you know, I sleep fine knowing that the end is in sight for us. I got to call the vet about my puppy tomorrow. That that touches your soul. I mean, it's just closer, and so it's personal kinds of things that have been happening and reminding me of this idea that, things work until they don't work anymore. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the period 1783 to 1789, or 1783 to 1800 sometimes. Historians, professional historians are given, like we have a license. And so we can actually say when a period starts and when it ends. And with this one, it's like there's always like some controversy. You've always got, this school and that school. And in fact, you realize that the American Revolution really ended in 1781 with the defeat of the British at Yorktown. That was it. I think, the British realized that, and they were focusing, they were still in the middle of a world war. So they wanted to focus on winning the war, which they eventually did win, by the way. Now, they didn't sign. We didn't sign a treaty with the French until 1783. But between 1781 and 1783, the revolution was already over in 1781. Now, we had signed an alliance with the French, in which the French had committed themselves to go to war with the mightiest empire on the face of the planet. They were going to join us, and they were going to declare war on the British. And we signed a treaty, and we said, "Hey guys, it's to the death. I mean, we will not sign separate treaties. We're in this together, and to the end." And of course, then when we defeated the British at Yorktown with the aid of the French, we proceeded then to stab the French in the back by making a separate treaty with the British. To their advantage, to allowing them then to focus on defeating the French, who had originally helped us. Just a minor point, but nobody really focuses on the fact that we betrayed our ally to sign this treaty. Never mind. That was Benjamin Franklin, by the way. And he was in France, and the whole point was it was the only rational thing to do. I mean, we were exhausted. We could not carry on, and had we honored our treaty with the French, we would have been vulnerable to invasion by the Spanish, by anybody. We needed to bring this to an end. It was the logical thing to do. Nevertheless, it wasn't the high and righteous thing to do. But historians get to say, so this is usually, they say 1783, that's when we signed the Treaty of Paris. And then 1789 is when the Constitution has been secured, and George Washington becomes the first president of the United States, and the American Republic really begins. This period is a period under the government that had been cobbled together during the American Revolution. It wasn't even officially voted on until 1781. The whole thing ended in 1783, with the treaty. But it was really, we fought the American Revolution with a government that we hadn't even voted to accept as a government, but it just worked anyway. You have to understand, a lot of the government so-called government that that the patriots ran during the American Revolution. The American Revolution was a revolution in which about 1/3 of the population were patriots, and 1/3 of the population were loyalists, and 1/3 of the population, this is rough, didn't care one way or the other. They were in between. They were neutral. So the patriots, never had a mandate other than the fact that they were the most motivated, and they were able to mobilize and be victorious. And the loyalists ended up really losing. So this period of 1781, 1783 to 1789 is a period of enormous chaos. It's a very dangerous world that we're in, and we have really no government. The Articles of Confederation, every state was an independent nation, and they belonged to kind of a United Nations, and every state had one vote. And if they couldn't agree, they had delegations. You could have 10 people in a delegation, but they only had one vote. And if they couldn't agree, then then it held up the whole thing, and you needed 9 people to pass anything. And they had no right to tax, and it was just it was a totally ineffective federal government, and chaos really reigned. But there's in all of the textbooks that I used throughout my career, this was a glorious beginning. This was the launch of something that was going to be really important, significant, and good, progressive. It's like, and there's another way to look at this. This is the beginning of the creation of the nation that is going to be the most significant contributor. You look at history, you look backwards at history, see, well, so what was the result? When Adolf Hitler was elected, what was the result? You look back and say, well, I guess it didn't work out all that well. And you reevaluate then the whole history and how it began. And here we're looking at the beginning of a process that's going to result in the just extermination of hundreds of native tribes, the exploitation and devastation of the land, and the creation of the largest slave society in the world, which is going to go and collapse within a generation. In 1789, you have the first president, and in 1859-60, you've got the Civil War. People were born when the country was born. They were young enough to see the country born, could be old enough to see it die. And then after the Civil War, you have this just absolute nadir of American history, in the violence that exploded after the Civil War against Black people, blaming them, of all people, for white supremacy and for the bloodshed and horrible consequences of the Civil War. So it's just a different way of looking back at our history, because you couldn't teach this in Florida because you're not allowed to make white people feel bad, or talk about systemic racism, which is an extraordinary notion. Things work until they don't. So I'm going to leave it there for this week, and get back to you next week. I hope you have a good week. The point is, we have to survive. You have to be able to live every day, and there's a difference between sadness and depression. You really need to squeeze out as much happiness as you can from every single day. Every breath you take has to be in defiance of a very dark reality around us. That's the message of our show, More Bad News. See you next week. Bye-bye.